every time I went on vacation, every subsequent vacation that I took after that, they would kind of reinvent the Radman died scenario. And so whatever I did, I would die in some new kind of car accident or ski accident or whatever. And it was only the new members who didn't really know the whole story behind that, the inside joke, that would fall for that. So it was kind of a quick way to sift out the newbies in the group. What else? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my mom really wanted me to find something else to do. Whereas my dad kind of, I think both of my parents actually, I was probably running the group to a point where it might have been borderline unhealthy, I think, but it was kind of, a little bit too obsessive. But I knew that that's what was required of me in order to keep the group in its number one place. But at the same time, I think my parents really realized that I was gaining a lot from it. I was learning a lot from it. Not just learning how to use computers, obviously, and everything that comes along with just using a computer at that age, but working with people and social skills and such. In fact, there's another interesting story. In my younger years, I did a lot of phone phreaking. Basically phone phreaking is making free phone calls illegally. And one of the times I was doing it, I got back billed for like $2,000 for like a month worth of calls, which, probably isn't so bad. So it was only $2,000, fortunately. My dad was really upset. The punishment was you have to go get a job and pay me back, which was also difficult because I wasn't old enough to get like a food safety permit still. So I had to social engineer my way into getting that. And so I did that somehow, magically. I was blessed enough to get that and then got the job, worked the minimum wage until I could repay him back the money that I owed him. And the funniest thing was he took that money that I repaid him with for the phone bill, and he applied that towards a brand new computer for me to use. Yeah. So so I think it was kind of like I disapprove but I approve kind of a thing. Like, this is kind of interesting. But maybe my mom didn't so much completely understand everything that was happening. Yeah. But my dad he's very interested. He was kind of, one thing that he didn't like, which is kind of funny, is like, why is all the ANSI art so evil? He's like, what was the deal with skulls and everything like this? And it progressively goes that way. But I mean, later it's because there was a trend that later started that everybody started copying comic books. Like, a lot of these artworks are taken from like Marvel comic books and stuff like that, and DC Comics and Image Comics, which was another trend that started. It seemed like martial law started doing scrollers, and everybody started doing scrollers, and then people just started doing comics, and it kind of got to a point though where nobody was doing original ANSI artwork anymore. They were just basically doing the hand-eye digitization of a comic book into ANSI art. But then one artist came along. Let's see if I can find some stuff. Named Lord Jazz. This stuff is by Lord Jazz. He was one of the first. Well, he pretty much was the first ANSI artist to consistently put out really good 100% original ANSI art. And not too many people, even to this day, can really match the level of quality that he was able to produce. He actually thought in the ANSI medium. He wouldn't need a reference point. He could just naturally type out really amazing. No, well, he did this piece of art. Well, I'll just use this as an example, though. Like, somebody would take a piece of, picture, a photograph, usually a comic book, put it right here, and then start drawing replicating that within the ANSI art medium. So they weren't really creating their own art, they were taking somebody else's art and kind of transcribing it. Some people would, but the thing was that it was very rare for people to even do original art anyhow. It got to a point where people were concerned because they had this level of quality that they wanted to maintain, and they were kind of competing at one point really to just create the best reproduction of a particular comic book cover or something like that. And when Lord Jazz came around, everybody stood up and took notice. Also, Lord Jazz was probably one of the fastest ANSI artists I've ever talked to. We had an idea one month to put out a magazine in ANSI art, and we told him what we wanted him to draw, and over the course of like a 30-minute phone conversation, he's like, I'm done. He's like, connect to my modem, call me back, and you can get this right now. So he's also one of the fastest ANSI artists that I know. Professionally, a lot of the people in ACID have gone on and kind of continued to do what they were doing in the group. Did you have a question? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like the old paint programs. Basically, yeah, first, I think a good starting point would be, since you mentioned the Mac Paint and stuff, are you familiar with like pixel art as far as creating a piece of artwork one dot at a time? Basically, ANSI art, as far as the constraints or the constraint of the actual resolution, it's like 80 pixels across by 25 down. That's a really limited amount of pixels that you have to work with. Of course, if you go beyond that 25 down, it becomes what's called a scrolling ANSI. So this is obviously much more than 80 by 25. It's always 80 wide, but anything beyond the 25 is going to be scrolling. As far as the application of the medium, it was meant for before you're using like Internet Explorer and Mozilla and stuff to connect over the internet. I mean, people were using bulletin boards and modems to do the same types of online communication, and so that medium was the BBS. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly the same space. So you have that working space of the 80, columns wide and 25 down. And so, a lot, yeah. Yeah. You can, but it's...
Basically, what you're seeing here is that you have a
Sure. Yeah, the dollar signs. 96. This is the one that you want to see.
This is the guy named Phillips. This makes more sense because
Yeah. Yeah. This is basically colored ASCII art. So it's a very thin line that you cross over before you're doing colored ASCII art and colored ANSI art. But the main delineation is, are you using the lower 128 original ASCII art characters, or are you using these blocks? So he does have a few blocks. This is kind of a hybrid. He actually called it ANSCII because he's doing ANSI art and ASCII art at the same time. He kind of throws in a couple throwbacks to ANSI art, but this is, for the most part, he's just using dollar signs. Like you could almost reproduce this, at least the outline, on a regular typewriter. Those are higher up. I believe they're like one. Yeah. I think, what were those, like 186, 219? Yeah. Yeah. I love this. It's great. This is one of his best. This is like one of his last pieces too. Let's see if I can scroll it. That's how I view on a modem. So this is limiting. When I view this in the animated mode, it confines it to 25 lines. So this is the most you would see on the screen at any one time. So you'd actually have to make a mental image. What did I just see up here? Because you wouldn't see, there wouldn't be any scroll back. It's because I'm using Windows that I can have this huge scroll back buffer. But in DOS, you'd see his head. And there's actually a kind of an inside joke about that too, because some people started getting way too close up and depending on these VGA mode viewing capabilities in order to see what the whole picture looked like. And so they're like, I can only fit the eyeball in 80 by 25. You're making the picture so big. His nose, I'm not going to remember what this is. You're depending too much on the program and not what it was originally intended for. And that's what people started doing. They would just kind of, forget the BBS thing. I'm just doing this art for the sake of art. And so there were a lot of different motives that artists had to create this art. Some of them were just doing it for the sole purpose of creating art. Other people did it for the recognition that they got within Acid or within the art scene. Other people did it for more of like a bartering. They used it as a bartering tool. So if they needed a piece of software, or if they wanted access to a bulletin board system that was maybe underground and needed to know somebody to get on it or have something to offer, the skill that they would offer or the thing that they would barter with was, I would draw you this piece of artwork in order for elite access on your BBS or something like that. And so there were a lot of different reasons that people were compelled to create this artwork. And a lot of them still hold true today, people that are still creating this artwork. Let's see. Yeah, so a lot of these were the welcome screens. So when you'd first connect, when you first connect to a BBS, that's what you'd be greeted with. Hello, welcome to whatever the name this was called, Piranha. Yeah. So this is kilohertz at that time. That was as good as it gets, really. Yeah. And this is what it looks like standing 20 feet away. Like, you want to see what it really. Let's see if I can. That's probably gonna crash. Okay. Yeah, that didn't make it very happy. There we go. There we go. Speed up the modem speed. This is a really nice program. It emulates a number of different modem speeds, so I could go all the way up to 28.8 with this. I wish I would have selected one that just has an eyeball fitting in the 80 by 25 region. Yeah, exactly that. We would use terminal communication programs. Most people that I knew were using Q modem or Procom Plus or Telemate or Telex. There were a number of different programs, but yeah, pretty much every program did emulate the ANSI BBS or IBM ANSI standard. Even Amiga and Mac terminal programs have the capability of doing this, because it just kind of turned into the de facto standard for terminal emulation that everybody used. Okay, there's about 5 minutes left, so are there any other questions? Yeah. Initially, when I first started, we used a program called The Draw, which was created by Ian Davis. He stopped developing